Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this month's Fearless Fridays interview. I'm here with Gareth Martin, who's South African, has been living in England for the last 20 years. I met him via his Brazilian wife on Instagram, and he's about to move to Portugal soon. So, welcome, Gareth, to the series. And why don't we dive straight in and I'll ask you what you were doing before and what you're doing now?
Cool. Anna, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a real honor and privilege. I was an investment banker for about 20 years and I loved it. I loved being an investment banker. It was really cool, but I just kind of knew deep down that it wasn't necessarily me for the rest of my life. And now I've left about 2 years ago and I work as a coach and I also run a podcast called the Ridiculously Human Podcast. And yeah, I feel like I've found my calling in life. It's quite an amazing feeling.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. And that's interesting that you say that you loved the investment banking. I mean, I'm the same when I left my job. It wasn't that I hated it in any way. So, what was it then that 2 years ago made you think, hang on, this is not what I want to do anymore, and to actually, get you to change?
Well, to be honest, it was longer than 2 years. Like in terms of wanting to know the change, I actually tried to leave. I think it was in 2013, first time, and I did leave. I left investment banking. I was like, cool, I'm done, because I've always had this thing inside me that I want to do something else. I mean, my life has basically been governed around wellness and fitness and these sort of things. And it's like my absolute passion. And I really thought I was going to sort of go down that route 6 years ago. And I left like for 4 months basically. And I went and I did all these courses on learning how to, build apps and do tech stuff and whatnot. But I didn't really have a plan, to be honest with you. And eventually I came back into banking because a mate of mine, he was working for one of the consultancies, and he's like, why don't you just come back? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll come back like just briefly. And it ended up being 3 years. But when I went back, I was like, cool, I need to have a plan now. So I made sure that within those 3 years, I used my time super wisely, and I trained up as much as I could in terms of what I wanted to do, and also saved as much cash as I could. So yeah, it's been a long time coming actually. And then eventually, like I said, 2 years ago, I was like, cool, I'm ready to go. I know what I want to do, and it's time to jump in the deep end.
I love that. I think that's quite telling that it takes longer than we realise. It's often not just a case of even when you do take the leap. And when I quit in 2013, it was very sudden. It's still taken me, it took me 3, 4 years probably to meander around through those twists and turns and find what I really want to do and actually make money doing it. So I think that's important to realise. As you said, you tried to leave and then you got sucked back in. And what about the coaching then? How did you come up with a specific idea? You said you'd done the wellness, that was always a part of what you were interested in. How did you end up with this particular business idea?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, when I left investment banking, I thought I was going to get into the health and wellness space. I trained many years ago to be a personal trainer, and in the last 3 years of my banking, I was sort of training people on the side, and I was like, I'm definitely going to get into this and do some sort of like high-end personal coaching. And but at the same time, when I left, I kind of realized, okay, I felt like a one-trick pony really, because I'd done banking for such a long time. I didn't really have a ton of other skills. So basically what I did is I said, okay, I need a year to go and upskill myself. So I went and I wanted to offer something like quite boutique-y and unique, not just personal training. There's so much more to being healthy than just hitting the gym, like so much more. So I went to India for about 2 or 3 months, and I trained to be a yoga instructor and a meditation teacher. Also then came back and I studied to be a chef. So I spent a year studying to be a chef. So I really wanted to offer something quite amazing. But then what happened, and then towards the end of that, actually, or during while I was finishing off my chef diploma, a friend of mine, he said, why don't you come do this executive coaching certification with me? And I was like, you know what, actually, that's a good idea, because there's a real art and science to coaching people properly. And I was like, I can learn this and apply it to the sort of fitness side of things. So that's what happened is we did this course together, and I realized, actually, you know what? I much prefer this. I wasn't really like enjoying like training people as much as I thought I would in the fitness side of things. But once I had done the executive coaching, I was like, this is actually really what I want to do. It gives me, I can still touch the business side of things because I really enjoy business and helping people and creating businesses and thinking of ideas and just helping people in general, overall, like in terms of life. I think so many people are stuck and confused and need a little bit of help along the way. So once I'd finished that course, I was like, this is definitely what I want to do. And it was that executive coaching which really changed the trajectory to the coaching that I'm actually doing now.
That sounds familiar. To be honest, I sort of found a coaching course a few years ago, and it was just, in my case, more for my own personal development. I found it interesting, and then I loved it so much that within sort of 6 months I had my website up and I was calling myself a coach because it was such a powerful piece that really fits. So you talked about sort of trying to leave and then coming back. What were the other challenges you experienced, I guess, in the last wave of leaving your job and then of setting up the new business?
So the challenges I found is that I lost interest. So even though like I said, I love my job in banking. I learned so much. I met so many great people, but it kind of became a difficult place to be. The banking industry has changed so much in London, and I'm sure around the world. The jobs are actually quite boring now. It's all regulatory. And because all the banks are generally trying to save money and downsize, you never really know like how safe your job is. And you're not working in an environment that's a growth sort of mindset environment. Everyone's like, they're worried about losing their jobs and these sort of things. So it kind of comes a place where it's almost like a negative place to work and a bit despondent. You'll go to like the fax machine or the coffee machine. What do I mean fax machine? We don't have fax machines, but you know what I mean? Like printer. Yeah. So you go to like the printer or the coffee machine and you chat to people and everyone will be like, oh my word, I can't wait to get out of this place. I hate it, blah, blah. And eventually for me, that just became a bit much. And I was like, okay, I'm getting closer and closer to where I need to be. And I just need to kind of now take that leap of faith just for my own well-being and own mindset. But it wasn't really like a massive struggle. It was just that pain, that mindset, which kind of I wasn't enjoying. I wasn't enjoying being around people that just didn't want to be somewhere. And then, everyone was like kind of in it in a way for themselves too. And it's just not a collaborative environment. It wasn't like that in the end. So it was that really sort of pushed the trigger button. And did you want me to talk about, the challenges of starting your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, it's first of all, it takes much longer than you'll ever imagine. And it's a lonely place. I think the picture that people have, like for me, for example, I was like, oh my word, I'm just going to be like at home and be able to do my own thing. And, I'm going to have so much time because I'm going to be doing my own thing and whatnot. And the reality is that actually you're going to work much harder than you probably ever worked in your corporate job, especially in the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean the first 2 to 3, maybe even longer years. Okay, it takes a lot to get a business going. You really need to get great systems in place to make things run that more effectively and more efficiently. But it is also much more lonely than you think. Like this working from home. Well, personally, definitely, I just thrive around people, right? And that's where I feel like I'm in my element. And so being at home is definitely lonely. So you need to really understand these things. You need to get your mindset in the right place and be happy with your own company. Like literally, I'm so happy that for a long time, I've worked on mindsets and like trained yoga and meditation and all these sort of things, because you get to actually be a bit more comfortable within your own skin. So yeah, those are two of the biggest challenges for sure. And also your network also changes, so you're gonna have to be ready to just be let down a little bit, maybe like by some of your friends who don't understand what you're doing. So yeah, it's just there's a few things like that I think are a bit of a struggle in the beginning, but you eventually find your feet, that's for sure. And these things which I speak about, which like sound like negatives, they're not really, because you generate like a really good work ethic and you build that up. But then you also get to enjoy like the really cool things, like the flexibility, like not having to listen to a boss, etc. And I'm sure we'll probably get onto some of that stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what about the other side of the coin then? How did you mentioned mindset and meditation work that you'd already been doing and working on yourself, but in terms of those things, the fact that it took longer than you thought and loneliness and so on, what did you do, or where did you get support to sort of get you through those first couple of years, I guess, that you've now passed?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like I said, I did a lot of courses and stuff. So I actually met a lot of people through that. And I did, there was one actual other course I didn't mention I did. It was called the Alt MBA by Seth Godin. And that was a real game changer for me. And it really, I got involved with this amazing network. Once again, it was online, but it was still like an amazing network. I've since met a lot of those people in person. But I think you have to put some sort of rules and some other things in place into your life. So like you have to make an effort to get out of the house every single day. You have to make an effort to join groups, possibly go to a co-working space once or twice a week, just to kind of just so that you can actually speak to people and see them. So yeah, I think what was the original question again? Sorry, I was
just how you address those challenges. I think, as you said, and I'm the same. I mean, I'm incredibly self-motivated and I love my own company, I guess. Plus, I get to speak to people like you all the time. So I feel at the end of the week as if I've been very social, but I do sometimes realize, especially in winter, I haven't actually left the house, which is a bit dangerous. So the weather helps a bit there. And as you said, I always recommend that people go to co-working spaces or, of course, online communities. I have my Facebook group or offline or whatever it might be. And I love that you invested in upskilling as well. I think that's so important. I mean, I'm a big fan of lifelong learning anyway, and I think however experienced you are in your corporate job, to some extent we are starting from scratch with this new business idea, and it's so important then to actually think, hang on, what is it I need to learn, where are my gaps, and then take the time and the money to work on those things.
Totally. And another thing actually, which I think is quite helpful and which helped me a lot, especially for people trying to make that transition. It is a very difficult transition. Not very difficult, but it is challenging, right? You are starting from square one again, basically. But a way to kind of sort of cover that transition or sort of move into your new transition, I found so I invested in a couple of startup companies, and in London and the UK, there's so much going on there, and there's actually some really great tax incentives too when you invest in startup businesses. And you'll be surprised, but these startup guys actually also need a bit of help from the guys in the corporate industry in terms of they don't get necessarily a lot of the structure that we have in the corporate world, the organization that we have, how to project manage things, et cetera, et cetera. So what you can actually do, and what I did, which was like massive for me, is I invested in a business and they then asked me to sit on the board as like a non-exec. And basically I learned that I sat with them for 5 years and we would catch up lots of the time, like every single week, and it was brilliant. So I learned so much about business through these guys that had started the startup, and that was also a nice way just to kind of meet new people and understand what is going on in the actual industry, and just to have that sort of more human connection as well.
Yeah, I love that. And you started to hint a little bit about the best things about your lifestyle now. You mentioned sort of freedom, flexibility. So tell me more. What is it you love about, the work you're doing now, the coaching, as well as your podcast, if you could tell us more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So look, when I was in banking, like I said, I loved it, but it's very one directional. I feel like you're just there. You're kind of helping the bank out, making them whatever, earn more money, and you're not really providing much value in the world, right? So for me, there was this huge void. Like I was like, fine, I'm doing a good job, whatever, but I'm not actually providing something positive back into the world. I'm not helping people. I'm not sharing good information, etc., etc. So, and I knew I wanted to do that, right? And now I feel like I'm doing that. And it's amazing. Like every single week on our podcast, we just speak to such interesting people, like people that have done incredible things, and we really get to know these people because it's long form. It's a 2-hour podcast, pretty much. We book in a 2-hour slot, and for most of the time, we're basically chatting to them about their life story, and you learn so much about people through their own stories. And for us, it's been beneficial, like on a selfish side of things as individuals, Craig and myself, who run it. But then the really cool thing is like when you post an episode and you have people that listen and they're like, oh my word, I totally related to that. And I found it so powerful. And it was like, and it's that sort of thing. You're like, okay, cool. I'm doing something good. We are, we're providing value. We're helping other people. And, that for me, that nourishes our soul. Like that, if we can touch one person a week, and help them out, then that is the best thing ever. And then on the coaching side of things, it's the same thing. It's more, obviously, it's more one-to-one based, and you just see these transformations in people. People that have, like a bit of low confidence or self-esteem, or just are confused and a little bit lost and don't kind of know how to get to the place that they want to get. And over 12 weeks, you see like these amazing changes in people, and their outlooks and their perspectives on the world are completely shifted. And, having an influence in that is just awesome. And so it's those sort of things that make such a big difference to my life now. And also just not having somebody to answer to every day. I think I feel fortunate that I had some great managers when I was in working for the investment bank. But then at the same time, you also have the odd one who really makes your life a misery. And that was the case for one of my last roles for like almost 2 years. I just had this dreadful kind of manager, not dreadful, but like it was, I don't know, it just wasn't nice. Like micromanaging for me is just not the way to do it. And I'm not that type of person that needs to be micromanaged, but the lack of awareness and self-awareness of this person thought that he needed to manage me like this. And I just like really disliked that. So it's just being in charge of your own day and your own destiny, which is amazing. It's such an amazing feeling having like autonomy in your life. And now I have like a fully online business. So, if we want to go, which Marissa and I are going to go to Portugal later on this year to live, we want to do that. That's cool. I'm not bound by where I need to where I need to be. And then also just having a little bit of that flexibility in your day to like this afternoon, I need to go and drop some keys off somewhere and have a cup of coffee with somebody. And that's cool. I don't have to ask anybody. I can plan my own day around that. And that's cool. That sort of stuff is really, really cool. So those are some of the things that I really, really love.
So many great aspects there, from the big picture of sort of the impact you're making in the world and the meaning of the work you're doing, down to more the practical logistics of having the flexibility to do errands during the day and so on. I think that's so powerful. Unfortunately, I think having a bad boss is one of the top reasons why people leave a job. And still now, when I sometimes come into contact with sort of office politics and all those emails and bureaucracy, I get sort of very tense, and I'm very happy to not have to deal with those things anymore. It makes such a difference.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, Marissa's had like, I don't know, some of the stories that she's been telling me like in her office environment lately. And I literally I almost get angry myself, because I'm like, it's so wrong how they do things in some of these organizations. And I think I think it's just big organizations. They just become sort of unmanageable and unruly in some sort of way, and they lose what their actual morals and ethics should be, and like what they should actually be doing, and they should be helping their staff more. And it makes me sad when I hear that happen, because I mean, it just, you know, I don't necessarily think it's always intentional. I just think they just become too big and they don't actually know what's the right thing to do is. So yeah, I'm like you. I don't miss that. And when I do hear it, because the other day I went out for lunch with some of my old banking mates, and I promise you, within 5 minutes, I was like, I'm so glad that I'm not in banking anymore, because it was literally like them just going, whoo, like moaning, you know what I mean?
It brings you
like
down, doesn't it, though? I mean, you can say, yes, I don't have to deal with that anymore, but just hearing it like makes me tense up. So I don't know how they manage it. I think, again, it's sort of the emperor's new clothes, or you're just in your little world. You have no idea that there's other possibilities. That's just your norm. So you don't even realize that it's possible to live and work a different way.
Yeah, you nailed it. You don't, because you're in it, you don't actually know how kind of bad it is in a way, you know, like you don't realize how controlled you're being, and like how kind of negative the environment is, and how they're not looking after you, and all these sort of things, because you've just become normalized. Like that's what it actually is. That's how it's meant to be. But like you said, when you take that step out and you see this whole other world, it's like, wow, okay, I can see now how bad it actually was, and how cool it is on this other side.
So that's the perfect transition then into the final question, which is, if someone is listening to this and maybe thinking, oh, that sounds like me, you know, I'm so sick of the politics and my boss, and I'd love some autonomy, and I'd love to make a bigger impact in the world, but I just don't see what could be possible for me, or this feels like the only thing I can do. What would you say to them now with the additional perspective you have from your own experience and your coaching?
Yeah, well, look, I think everybody in this world has something amazing to share. And I think because of the way society is, it's kind of like ground out of us from a young age. You know, we're like, okay, this is how the world works. This is what you must do. You must go study. You must do this, and blah blah blah. And you forget to be creative, and you stop being creative, and you actually almost forget who you are as a person. It's amazing how like some people just they just forget what values they have, not what values they have, but like what things that they're really good at. And I think you really need to sort of do some inner work first, right? Like everything comes from inside you. And you really need to start understanding who you are, but also remembering who you are. And that you do have something amazing to offer this world. And it's something like I always tell people, and they're like, no, I can't do anything. I'm like, no, cool. Let's go. Let's just go back. Let's try and understand who you are, what you've done, et cetera, et cetera. What do you love? What did you stop doing? Why did you stop doing it? So people need to spend time understanding who they are, right? And that they do, and just like I said, remembering that they do have something amazing to offer. What was I going with this? What was it? You wanted advice on?
Yeah, sorry, well, I can just continue what you're saying there. So if somebody wants to do that inner work, you know, because all these things, you know, through coaching, I learned about limiting beliefs, and I do those same exercises with my clients now. I just wonder if I'd never heard of those things. I'd never really heard of coaching or mindset or beliefs or any of those things. Yeah. So again, thinking back to where you were a few years ago, and if you hadn't heard of those things, where can they get started? Should they be working with a coach, or you know, can they get a book? Can they just sit down with a pen and paper and try to start thinking about these things?
I think every single person in the world is different, and they're gonna need different things, right? So that's why, like, that you need to understand who you are and what you know, what helps you the most. But I actually wish I had a coach, definitely somebody who had done what I had done, but I didn't even at the time realize it wasn't even like an option that came onto my radar. I was just like, okay, I've just got to kind of go and figure this out myself. But seriously, if you can get yourself a coach, and you can afford to get somebody, that will sort of expedite, you know, your journey and your path so much more than you can ever imagine. Because these people have done what you want to do. They know the pain, they know the struggles, everything that you're going to go through and experience. But then at the same time, you also need to go and do work yourself, right? You need to go and join courses. You need to go and read books. You need to go and just do things and go to events and find out what is out there, because you're gonna have an idea of what you want to do, but that's gonna morph over time for sure. Like it's gonna change from from whatever 1 year ago to now. It's going to be completely different probably. So you need to keep that in the back of your mind, but you also need to go and find out all these things and meet these people and see what other people are doing. I think that's such an important part of it. And another thing that I think is super important is you need to speak to those people that are close to you. You need to tell them what your plans are, right? And so that you get their buy-in, because it's very difficult for you to go from like a well-paid corporate job to something that is not going to have income immediately, most probably. And you need to get them on board as well. You need to say, look, this is what I want to do. It will mean the world to me if you can provide me with your support and your backing. And because it's very difficult when you make that transition, because so many people don't understand. And then the people that are close to you are normally the people that criticize you. And that really can bring you down, So you really have to get those people on board. I think that's a huge one. And just make sure that you're always talking to them. You're telling them how things are going, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing is, I would say, or two things actually. Make sure that you've saved double the amount of money that you think you need. Like for me, that is huge. Like I feel super fortunate that I've always been kind of savvy when it comes to that. From a young age, it was drilled in me to save money and blah blah. But you're seriously going to need double the amounts that you probably think you need, because you don't want that stress of like, I have to do something, have to start getting in money. Because my savings are running out. Because what happens when you're so stressed out like that is that you start probably doing things that you don't necessarily want to do. You start like going, okay, I have to do this to make money, and it's not really in line with your sort of end game. So I think that is super important. And make sure you have a plan. And like I know we said have a coach, and that's cool. They would help you with that. If you don't, then make sure you have a plan. Write it out. Seriously, write it out. Spend hours and hours and hours, weeks and weeks and weeks doing it, because it's going to really help you in the long run. And I think it's so important. Like, and make sure, the idea that you have that it's going to have some sort of revenue coming in at some point too, just so it's that little pick me up. It doesn't have to completely replace what you say we're earning, as long as you've saved up enough money, but just that it gives that little bit of enthusiasm when you get that little bit of money coming in, and just have a plan around that. Like, how am I going to sort of get something? So hopefully those are a little bit helpful.
Yes, so many nuggets. I hope people are paying attention and taking notes, because I think there's a lot of really practical advice there. I love what you said about the sort of family and friends, because I almost take a different approach, and I love that you said that you need to get them on board, because I often advise people to almost take a step back, at least in the initial phase when you have no idea what you're doing yet. So before you have the plan and so on, because I think, as you said, you can scare people around you. Ultimately, they're well-intentioned. They care about you. They want you to do well. And if you just kind of go every day, you're like, oh, I'm going to become a coach. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to travel. Oh, no, they begin to worry, I think. And then they're going to become critical, and you're going to find yourself getting defensive and so on. So I always say, try to incubate yourself a little bit, maybe go away, have some time to do these exercises, whether you're reading or doing a course or whatever, working with a coach. And then, as you said, when you have kind of more of at least the parameters or the framework of what you want to do, then you can, and I love what you said about, it would mean the world to me just expressing it that way. Not you have to support me or sort of putting the pressure on them, but I'd really appreciate, I haven't quite figured everything out yet, but this is what I'm doing and why, and let me know if you have any questions, but I'd really appreciate your support. So I think that's a really important one that hasn't come up before.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad it helped. But it's definitely, I think it is a huge one, because it can, if they're not on board with you, it's those little one-liners that can really
Yes.
kind of destroy your confidence. Like, oh, so what did you do today? And so did you get a new client, or what I mean? Like, it's not that it's coming from a bad place, but you know if you are struggling, it can really be quite piercing and hurt you a bit. So as long as I think for me in life, the most important thing for every single person is communication. And communication will uh, it's twofold. It can clear up every single issue in the entire world if we do it properly and nicely. But at the same time, it can destroy everything if you do it the wrong way. And that can be on grand scales, and it can be on smaller scales too. And I think if we can just be 100% honest and truthful with our communication, like telling these people that you just would like their help and them to support you, and these sort of things, then that makes things a hell of a lot easier, because they understand where you're coming from. You've been able to say where you're coming from, and you can kind of join together and make this a much easier process. So yeah.
Great. Well, Gareth, I've loved hearing about your story and also your incredible advice there in particular. And again, I hope everyone's listening and pay attention. I 100% agree with all those points, and they've really mirrored my experience too. So thank you so much for that. I'll be sure to link to the Ridiculously Human podcast. Where else can we find you if someone wants to learn more about your coaching or what you're doing these days?
Yeah, for sure. So my website is garethmartin.net, and on there's all my my links to my social media and stuff, and I can share those with you separately if you want as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
Like, I'm kind of on all the different platforms and just still figuring out which ones are the best ones, because it's a minefield actually. Like, once you once you go from just going into the office every single day to doing what we do now, like, there's so many ways to kind of market yourself and grow, your own business and stuff. But it takes a long time to figure out what works well for you, and just what you're most comfortable with as well, and then what the best thing to do is. So I'm just figuring out all of them still. But yeah, thanks. So Ridiculously Human, which is ridic-human.com, and garethmartin.net.
Great. Yeah, and it's the other side of sort of the autonomy and freedom is that we actually have to make our own decisions, right? There's no one telling us what to do, and there is no
Yeah.
right answer necessarily. There's no big company, corporation telling you this is our policy, this is what you're doing. And it's really, even as much as I could guide you on branding marketing, you have to figure out at least some parts for yourself in terms of what works for you, what works for your audience, and what you enjoy doing, and so on. So it's part of that
Yeah.
longer term journey that we're on, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And also one of the most important things for people to realize is you still have to have a lot of discipline in your life. Flexibility is cool, like, it's a cool thing. And I know discipline and focus are not sexy words, but actually, the more disciplined you are, the more focused you are, the more flexibility you're going to actually have in your life. And you have to have routines in your day. You have to have, things to do, checklists, goals, etc. Otherwise, you're just going to meander, and you're going to just kind of lose yourself and lose focus, and not actually achieve anything. So
No, thank
very
you for that. That's
things.
important. I think, again, the pendulum swings too far. Sometimes when I first left, I just wanted no alarm clocks, no routine, no structure, and so on. And I've had the same realization over the last few years. A little bit of structure, discipline, focus is what then frees up your time and energy to do all those other things that you want to do. So that's an important reminder as well. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. It was really lovely to speak to you, and I look forward to listening to your podcast, as I'm sure everyone else will as well, and to hearing what you get up to in the coming months and years.
Cool. That's so cool. It's so kind of you to allow me to have this time with you. I really appreciate it. I know the amount of work that goes into producing these things, it's not easy. I don't think people quite get it. So I really appreciate you inviting me on here, and it's really been cool chatting to you and just being on the other side of the microphone for a change as well. Just it's definitely a different experience. So I really do appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, for me, like for you with the podcast, it's been my favourite part of connecting with people over the last 5 years, 5, 6 years around the world, hearing stories. And then there's such a range now of stories. I collected some of them together in a book last year. and people from all around the world can find that one story, that one nugget that gives them the little inspiration. As you said, that's incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing your experience, your insights.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You're doing amazing things, like spreading value and helping people is the best thing in the world we can all do. So appreciate it.
Thank you.